You have worked with the most incredible brands, generated over $1 billion in revenue for them. If you had a brand that was struggling to be seen, where would you start?
Shelby Van Zwol is one of the top 3 women in e-commerce. She makes brands stand out in even the most competitive markets. And today, she's teaching you how to podcast.
We have so many brands that come to us that are in that exact situation. And I strip it right back. Who is this actually for? Because a lot of people get stuck with marketer's bias. You believe something's great, so you believe everyone will love it, everyone will know about it. You have to have the mindset that everyone is going to hate this, so how can I prove them wrong? How can I get them involved? How can I make them excited? They have bought the one thing that you cannot buy. You ask me what business is going to be thriving in 5 years' time, it's that business. You can buy eyeballs, but you can't buy that. A podcast, it is a product because you are, one, trying to garner the attention of your listeners, but two, you're going to try and commercialize that.
We have seen so many people waste money here.
I can imagine.
Where would they even begin?
Okay.
Shelby, welcome to How Do I Podcast?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and so excited to be in this space.
Oh my Lord, I know. This is one of the best things about traveling with this podcast. It's like we get to see all these cool places and have the vibe.
Yeah, I feel like I'm inspired already just looking out the window.
Yes,
it'd be great.
Definitely. Now, some people are going to think it's a bit weird that I've got you on today because podcasting is like organic media, right? Like everyone is about all the free stuff, but there are 2 reasons that I wanted to talk to you. One is because you are such a marketing genius. Like you have worked with the most incredible brands. I think people will open up a cupboard or a pantry in their house. They'll be like, oh yes, that one. Like so many amazing brands, generated over $1 billion in revenue for them. But the second one is I've seen so many people waste money on paid media, whether it's through an agency or trying to do it themselves. It's like they start doing it and then nothing happens. They throw more money at it and they just get in this like vortex of terrible times. So I really want to talk about that as well as some marketing stuff with you as well.
Of course. Absolutely. I'm here. I've probably been pulled aside many times in the past where people will say like, oh, but you work in e-commerce, so here's my situation or here's what I do. What do you think? So like you said, I can apply my marketing mindset across podcasting. I can apply my marketing mindset across across service space. Like it's the actual psychology. And I'm always thinking about how industries are changing. And I think that combines into marketing, which is why when you say, you open a pantry and you're seeing these brands and you're seeing the clients that I market, I think what my team and I have the ability to do is to take a product or brand and make it relevant and make it transform with the market, So you'll see all the brands, you're like, oh, that brand. It's like, yeah, they're doing such a good job online, but it's not that they're actually doing anything different. They're just pushing the boundaries a little bit and making sure they're always ahead.
I'm excited. So before we dive into all the juicy stuff, the question we ask everyone to the podcast is, what is a podcast that you regularly listen to and keep coming back to and why?
Okay, well, this is going to sound probably so cliche, but the Diary of a CEO, I listen
Everyone
to,
says it.
And I truly believe, I never used to be an avid listener for the Diary of a CEO. Like I followed Steven and his career because he started in digital, like I followed him, right? But I think it's the diversity of guests, but how enriching each of their guests are. So like, I don't feel he's pushed himself into a corner to talk about one thing. I mean, you don't know what you're opening up to. One day it's a crime scene specialist, next day it's someone talking about longevity, but it's things that are really valuable or really interesting, right? So I would love to learn about biohacking, but I'm also so intrigued and all the secrets that happen behind like a criminal mastermind. Like it's just very interesting. Tara and I were in the car on the way out. We were talking about why people listen to podcasts these days and how there are so many podcasts. I mean, you would know this, right?
Yes.
This is your specialty, right? There are so many people that just want to start a podcast for the sake of a podcast, but not thinking about how they're going to enrich the end user. And I think that's what Steven's done really well. He's thought like, what isn't in the market and how can I enrich and captivate? Because obviously those ears, that listening time is then valuable for him commercially, like wild opportunities.
Definitely. Yes. And I think he's so tapped into that listener, as you said, like, they are those high performers that aren't just business owners. They're interested in their health. They're interested in all these different facets. Yeah.
Captures that really well.
And we're all about efficiency. So you get to listen to one podcast and cover all those topics.
Correct.
Rather than having to go to so many different ones. So very good. Everyone says it. I love it.
I'm
It's
sorry.
great.
I feel like that's so boring.
I'm going to have to start banning him. But
apart from the Diary of a CEO, what's your favorite podcast?
No, it's really good. Okay, so as we're talking today, one of the things we do is we treat every single podcast like a brand. And so as we're talking about branding in this next section, if you have a podcast, I want you to think about this as if it's applying to your podcast.
Love.
So talk to me, if you had a brand that was struggling to be seen, where would you start?
Oh, this is okay, because it's probably going to be cliche. I promise I will make sure that I challenge the norm, right? we have so many brands that come to us that are in that exact situation. So they will knock on our door and say, I've tried XYZ and I just can't seem to break through, be seen, whatever it is, right? And I strip it right back. The first thing I consider or will say to the client, depending how far we get into discussions, is who is this actually for? Because a lot of people get stuck with, I'm going to call it like marketer's bias. So hear me out with this. Yeah. Marketer's bias is where you believe something's great, so you believe everyone will love it, everyone will know about it, and it's going to have this great winning success. When in fact we live in an oversaturated world from a multimedia perspective, from every touch point, whether we open our phone, whether we're driving on the freeway, wherever we go, everything is commercialized and it is oversaturated. And so I always think to myself, if you're struggling to be seen, if your brand is not yet getting the visibility it needs in whatever that looks like for you, whether it's on social media, whether that's paid through through networking and friends and whatever it is, think about, first of all, who is this actually for? I'll give you a really good example. I've had probably 100 pink clay masks knock on my door in the last 10 years, right? And all very ambitious people who have got great intention. But I will say to them, okay, so you've got a pink clay mask. So that's exciting, but what's so great about this product, right? What is so good about this product? And they will turn to me and they'll say, oh, it's vegan, it's cruelty-free, it cleans your pores, whatever, right? And I'll say, but so does the other pink clay masks on the market, right? They already do that, and they've already got brand equity. They've already got that visibility. So they are going to be leaders in that space. And then people will turn to me and be like, oh, well, and they can't actually identify exactly what their USP is for that brand, right? And the problem is when it gets to that, the only way you can really compete is on some really harsh metrics like price or having the biggest wallet in the universe because you've got the biggest marketing budget and you can basically buy your way to success. And so I always challenge people to come back to why it exists. And that would very, very well apply to podcasts. Yeah. Because a podcast is such a specialized product. It is a product. To me, it's a commodity because you are, one, trying to garner the attention of your listeners, but two, you're going to try and commercialize that in the back end with sponsors and other things, right? So you basically do have a product in my eyes, even though it is a multimedia kind of channel, right? So what makes your podcast so great? That will be what allows you to stand out. So the next thing is if you actually do have a really good niche, and I have come across brands before that have really good niches or really good USPs, but yet are not grabbing enough attention, I would ask what channels you're trying to garner attention on. You need to understand, are you trying to appear on the wrong platforms, right? So everyone tells you need to be on social media, and you do need to be on social media. If you're not on social media, does your brand even exist? That's a good conversation. But are you trying to shop on too many channels? Right? Are you actually trying to do too many things and spreading yourself thin that now you actually aren't achieving any success on any platform? I look at marketing as a building block perspective and visibility is a part of marketing. So what I would say is if you are trying to launch a podcast and get visibility for your brand, or you're not getting seen and you want more visibility, nail one box first. I would not encourage you to be on TikTok and Substack and bloody Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram and wherever else you want to be all at once if you haven't nailed it, because you're going to spread yourself thin. And if you can understand the different algorithms of each platform, you're going to be able to then get visibility. So coming back to your question in a very roundabout way, my way of approaching this would be, one, where are your audience showing up? What is your strongest skill set that you have? Are you great at long form media and can nail YouTube? Are you great at quick hooks? You can nail TikTok, whatever it is. And then putting your eggs into investing in that basket rather than trying to do them all, because that is probably one of the biggest things that I see is brands that just try and be everywhere and they do nothing great. Right? And that's secondary, obviously, to having a good podcast. The third thing I would do is I would use traditional word of mouth. It is just so underrated. People don't understand the ability of network connection and just a social network and using word of mouth and just being quite forthright. When I say forthright, a lot of opportunities that have landed in my business on behalf of my brand for the last 10 years have come out of just emailing someone and being like, hi, I exist. If you ever need anything, just like, here we are, like, this is who I am, I exist. Because if you don't ask, it's already a no. But at least if you do ask, it's a 50% chance of a yes. And what I mean by that is that if you feel you're not getting visibility on your podcast or your brand isn't getting visibility, and you want that visibility, then reaching out to other brands that would have the same consumer and going, can we collaborate? Is there a way we can cross connect? Maybe even if we were to bring worlds together, reaching out to, you know, a product you love. Say you're a podcast about skincare. I'm just going to throw that out there, right? Then reaching out to all these different skincares, offering them, you know, the ability to send you a product, and you'll create, you know, you'll do testing, you'll talk about it, and then creating a multimedia asset that they can then share and mention they've been, you know, featured on, and just getting yourself out there and having that social kind of word of mouth network going.
Would your strategy change if they were in a really, really saturated niche or target market?
100%. So I would probably say to you, actually, what's great for me, because you work in this as a full-time role. Talk to me, what is a saturated market that you feel? And then I'll provide some suggestions.
All of them. I think everyone,
all of them. It's
every
so
single
true.
one of them.
Everything, I know, we are oversaturated.
Yeah, like we really work with our clients for a long time to find what
That
their
niche
niche is in that pocket.
Yes.
But I feel like everybody in the business world wants to start a podcast.
It's so true. Sahara and I talk about in the car, like you said, every single person wants to start a podcast. All right.
Yeah. So if they're interviewing, potentially like interviewing founders, because that's what they all want to do.
Yeah, they want to interview founders. I actually have a really good idea for a podcast.
Oh, should we
will
talk about this off mic?
We will connect at the end, because that's what I want to do next year.
Yes,
that has not been done.
Yeah.
But anyway, digressing back to this. All right. Everything is saturated. So putting that aside, social media is also oversaturated. So my feedback and thought process is, how are you going to actually make a mark, right? And if you are choosing to interview founders, which most business owners want to do, then possibly my starting point would be to interview founders that have never been interviewed before. And it sounds like it's so easy to say than actually do, but a lot of founders have been interviewed, right? And they're great. But sometimes you hear the same story or you hear the same advice over and over again. And so then it's not enriching for the end audience. It might be enriching for that podcast and their episodes, but it's not actually enriching for the audience if the audience has heard about it elsewhere. There are many business owners that I've listened to talk before, and I'm now bored.
Yeah, you know their story.
Because I'm like, I'm done. And that's why today, even when you didn't ask me about my story, I'm like, thank God, because I feel like I'm sick of explaining it because everyone's heard it, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so first things first is I would look at my lineup. I would look at my lineup and think, okay, truthfully, like all these mainstream founders, who are brilliant, by the way, have been interviewed. Screw them though, because people have already heard their story. Let's go and find some golden nuggets in some talent that actually hasn't put their hand up. Maybe they haven't put their hand up because maybe they are up and coming. I feel like one really good knack of any business or brand owner is the ability to see something before it happens, right? So if you're a podcaster and you want to create engaging content, you need to actually be keeping your eye on people in market through social media, founders, for example, that are up and coming, that you feel that you could actually have that first right to interview and get the juice out of them. That's the first thing I would do if I was oversaturated. So thinking about, all right, I know I've got a really good topic. I can find some really unique up and coming founders or people, doesn't have to be founders. I can find some really great people that will enrich my podcast. And now I'm going to think about how I can deliver it in a way that is more engaging, more exciting, and never been done, right? If you look at every single successful business on this planet, really successful business, they are always the first to market, right? Heritage, they are always the first to market, and they are doing something that is challenging an existing industry. They always say the best product you can bring out to market is just revitalizing an existing product. So podcasting is an existing product. How can we revitalize it? How can we challenge it? How can we make it better, right? I think that's what I would do. And that is how I would look at it. I would sit down and I would have a piece of paper, and Sahara knows this, and I would be like, what can we do different that's going to be equally quality driven but unique, where people go, wow, that's cool, and be the first to do it. In a saturated market, you can do that. There are ways to do that. And then the other thing I would do probably if I wanted to stand out with my podcast is I would just hustle on the proactive community management. So I would just make sure that my podcast Instagram page, let's say, or me personally, if I was driving it from a personal brand perspective, was just showing up in everyone's comment section. You couldn't escape me. I'm everywhere. Because then they're gonna be like, who is this person that's always, having these conversations in our Reels comments or our TikTok comments? And they'll come across and they'll discover the page. They'll be like, wow, proactive community management is a very big part of what we do for our clients in the social space for their brands. Although they don't have podcasts, it is still making sure that they are at the forefront of every conversation and relatable conversation. So obviously when we're talking about pop culture, our really fun kind of fast-moving consumer good brands are at the front of those conversations on social media threads, and Reels and TikTok comment sections, and then our more premium brands are at the forefront of celebrity comment sections and things like that. It's really good. Proactive community management is a hack of the century.
Genius. So is that like going to one of those pages, like going to a celebrity page and going into their comments?
Yeah, and just replying to comments and just showing up in the comments. It's free. So we normally do between 5 and 10 minutes of proactive community management for every client every day in the social media space. And it's the best billboard real estate you can get, because now all of a sudden, instead of just having to rely on your social media showing up, guess what happens when all these other reels are going viral and people are going to the comment section to read the comments, look at the comments, engage in the comments? You're there every time. It's really good.
So clever. And we won't go into it today, but I think if you are thinking of your podcast like a brand and you've got such a distinctive tone of voice, that is such a perfect opportunity to really talk about that.
Well, that's what I mean. So one of our clients has a very cheeky tone of voice. And so we show up in comment sections like with cheeky things, you know? So then we see other consumers like liking our comment, replying to our comment. We see followers come out of that because they're aligning with like our kind of tone of voice and our humor. And it's, you know, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I've got to create 30 pieces of content this month. I've got to post out all this content, and like, where am I going to find the time? You can find 5 minutes a day to comment. Yeah. And it's called proactive community management. Very good.
Yeah. Trademark that.
Trademark that. That's a good one. Yeah. Good for you guys.
Actually.
So, and like just to be showing up in, anyway.
So clever. Okay. And so with that and podcast pages, we just touched on that.
Yes.
Would you suggest that they're also then like creating posts themselves around those topics? So say they were like a founder-led podcast. Are they going to be then maybe potentially sharing news about like industry trends? Like, should they be doing that sort of stuff too?
You could take it 2 different ways, right? You could take this, what we would call 2 different streams. One, you could take it like the educational delivery stream, which is basically exactly like you said. You're keeping everyone up to date with marketing trends. Say it was a marketing podcast, marketing trends, what's happening in the marketing world, becoming almost like an education destination or outlet. And then you're just amplifying that with your online podcast. Or you could take it the behind the scenes kind of narrative way, where you're just talking to the camera about things that are happening in your business or in your life that is interesting and relates back to the podcast. So for example, if I had a marketing podcast and I wanted to create content, I don't think I would go out and then regurgitate what's happening in market, because people can find that through other streams. It's very saturated. What I think I would be providing is my perspective on things as they're happening. So I'd be providing perspective on something I did for a client that day, perspective on something I saw in the news, because that's what people listen to, you know. It's not oversaturated yet. That's what I would do. I would definitely be showing up, but choosing whether you're wanting to take that kind of like news outlet, education, authoritative kind of channel or approach, or if you want to just go purely that point of view and like narrative.
I love that, because I think on so many people, they'll start a podcast, they'll create a podcast page, and then the only thing that they post on there is
their podcast
clips.
content.
It's like
that's not enough.
Why would I follow you?
It's not enough, but it's not enough exactly because it is saturated. People that, and again, that comes back to exactly the mindset we spoke about at the beginning. Is then that is people having marketing bias, being like, oh, my content's so good, everyone's going to love it. You have to fully strip back and go, everyone hates this. That is what you need to do. You have to have the mindset that everyone is going to hate this, so how can I prove them wrong? How can I get them involved? How can I make them excited? Because the minute you actually become complacent, I think Chain Social is a really good example of this, is that we operate in an industry that is oversaturated. As you probably have heard me speak about, there's 10,000 plus marketing agencies now. And one of the things you spoke to me, I don't know if we were on camera or off camera, was about how we do lots of crazy things, right? But what that does is it creates conversations, it creates stories, it creates content line that isn't just us posting our services. If you actually went in our feed, occasionally we'll post about a new client, but most of the time it's just wild things we've done, like renting out a super yacht or like sending branded pizzas, or like it's not just things, it's not like gloaty, it's actually just fun content or aspirational content that makes people go, what's this? This is fun. People start following us not because they are interested in ever working with our agency, but they just now know we exist. So then what happens is in market, we get inquiries from brands being like, oh, our friend told us to contact you. Because their friend doesn't work in marketing, but their friend's like, that was top of mind. And the similar thing can definitely apply to podcasters, is that you can't just push out your own content. In a way, it is almost boring.
Yeah.
People are like,
especially if you've listened to the episode. I've seen that clip. I've heard it.
Yeah, you're like, that's boring, right? Yeah. And it's all good to have some highlight clips or some kind of like teasers. But outside of that, what is your brand? Because your brand can't just be your clips. That's transactional. It doesn't exist like that.
Let's talk about the experiences though, because they are wild. Like, I'm not going to go into the detail of them, but guys, just go to Chain Social's page, go to Shelby's page. Like, I think we all just want to work for you forever because of all the cool stuff you do. But even in your events, right? Yes. Like, everything is branded. I think the last event there was like branded water cans. Like, every is single an experience thing. Everything has thought behind it.
It does.
How could someone start to come up with those ideas if they wanted to, build a community with their podcast?
Yep.
And granted, a lot of this is online. Like, it's not perhaps in person unless they're doing a live event.
Yes.
But what sort of things could they bring in?
Well, I'm going to probably start with the way in which the exercise I do in my brain. I'm going to start with this to see if anyone can relate to this or like start thinking like this, right? So a perfect example, and I want to relay this because I feel like this will show how the brain works and then how you can kind of then think of ideas for your brand, whether it's offline or online. We're about to get a company car. We've never had a company car before. I've had personal cars and things like that, but we've always just reimbursed our staff for their kilometres they travel. But now we've got a really big team and we're out on the road every day, and it just makes more sense financially to have a company car. So I was thinking down and I was like, okay, well, what car would align with Chain Social, right? And obviously in my biggest dream, it would be like a Rolls Royce or something wild, but that is just not practical, nor would my accountant ever sign that off, right? So then I was thinking though, I could go and get like a little hatchback Mercedes, which is kind of cute, but that adds no value back to my brand. It has no value, right? So what I mean by that is like people will just see like, a white Mercedes. Well, cool. It's just everyone's got a white Mercedes. Like, why it doesn't do anything for my brand, and this has to represent my brand. So then I started to think, okay, well, if this car has to be an extension of my brand, what would this car be? What would it do? What should it be doing? What extra value can it give my business, right? Outside of just being a physical A to B vehicle, what can it do? So then I was like, all right, well, Chain is a little bit bougie. Chain is a little bit like, we're an office of all females, so we're very like femmy. We're very femmy. We're very bold. We've got all these different kind of characteristics. So then I thought, well, there's no car that exists on the market for that. So I'm going to create my own car, right? Now, but hear me out. I'm not manufacturing, like I'm not going to China and creating a new car brand.
Segue, we're starting a car company.
No. But I'm like, I now was like, all right, we need to create something bespoke. So I am now purchasing a Defender, a Land Rover Defender from like 2002 that has the top off the back.
Yes.
And we're going to have it like go from a manual to an auto conversion to make it functional, but we're going to make it chrome cream. It's going to have like bronze bars over it. Like it's going to be basically Barbie Malibu car.
I love it.
But make it functional, right?
Yeah.
When it is driving on the road, people are going to be like, that's the Chain Social car, because not one other person in Australia will have that car, and it will have our brand obviously on the side. But imagine the content with the roofs down, but we're a marketing agency. We don't actually sell cars. We don't sell car content. But what it will do is as people sit on the road, wherever they are in Melbourne, Queensland, wherever we're driving around, if people know our brand, it is instantly recognizable, right? Whereas if I just got a white Mercedes, it's a nice car, but it's not instantly recognizable. So to me, my car or the company car is now an extension of my brand and is now an activation every time I drive it, right? So where someone could just get a normal car, that doesn't exist in my land. And so that's how I approach marketing. And that's how I would approach if I owned a podcast. That is how I'm thinking outside the box. Yeah. So I'm thinking, taking that same process. So going back to what I said before, thinking, okay, what can I do with the resources I have available that can create some noise or some excitement or some activation? What do people want? So if I was a podcast about, what's a really unique podcast?
This is going to be hilarious. Yeah. What about like a knitting podcast?
A knitting podcast.
Super random.
Okay, and what they can do? Yeah. Does the person that owns the knitting podcast already have a social media platform, or it's just someone who just like loves knitting?
Loves knitting, and I think they're like really tapping into that Gen Z audience.
Okay. All right, this is what I would do.
Every time I listen to a podcast, I get so excited about all the things I've heard. I can't wait to implement them in my business, and then life happens, and I don't do anything with it. And I don't want this podcast to be that for you. I want you to take action and actually be able to implement these things that you're learning today. So head to the show notes or send me the word debrief over on Instagram, and I'll send you all the key takeaways from today. Because the difference isn't what you know, it's what you do. Let's get back into the show.
And someone actually, I'm not going to take full credit for this because I think this is a really cool idea, but I didn't do this idea, but I'm going to share it. Last Christmas, I got a parcel delivered to my office, right? And I opened up the parcel, and it was a hat, a really cool hat, right? A cap. It wasn't a branded, like, here's a beautiful cap, we want you to wear it and love it, whatever. It wasn't like an influencer send or anything like that. It was a cap, and it said, like, we think you're great on the cap. Yeah. And there was a little card inside, a handwritten card, and it said, this is one of 100. We've made these caps. We've handmade these caps. And we've sent them to 100 people in Australia that we think are truly inspiring. Love,
That's
Anonymous.
Oh my gosh.
I still don't know who it's from, right? But do you know how, like, I was, like, then in investigator mode. I was saying to all the girls in the office, look at this hat. Who's this hat from? What the hell? Then I was like, can someone go and reverse image search it, see if they can find someone on social media that's done it? And then the girls in the office were like, let me see if I can find it online. Like, we probably dedicated an hour of time to try and work out who the hell this hat is from, right?
Yeah.
That's free marketing. So now apply that to a knitting podcast. Say I was a really cool knitter or great knitter and I just wanted to create this amazing podcast and talk about knitting and all that. I would knit out some everyday items, maybe like a drink holder and, like, I don't know, a knitted necklace. I don't know what knitters do, knitted headband, whatever it is.
I love this.
Lots of pieces. I'd put the time in, like, but use my materials I have, and I would send them out to some really cool Gen Z, I'm going to call them like influential. So not influencers, but influentials, people that have a similar voice in categories. So, like, they would be in, like, that textile category. They really respect, like, sustainability and all these kind of things, you know, like custom made Australia. And I would send them to them and I would say, this is who I am. And I'm starting a podcast and I'm going to show you like what I can do and how cool knitting can be, because you don't have to knit a jumper or a crochet bed blanket. You can knit a headband or whatever.
Yeah.
And here's a QR code to my website where I've got some knitting, downloadables, and have a great day.
Genius.
Because what's going to happen, they're going to share on social media and be like, I just got the weirdest package, but this is so cool. Look, this person's made this knitted headband, and they also have online where you can download like free knitting tutorials, or they have a course online. Just getting it out there in that way.
Yeah. And I think you can apply that in so many different ways. Like, you spoke at the start around the car and its visual identity.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a knitter and you've got a knitting podcast, like,
Yes.
where you're knitting things.
Correct.
And going back to, like, if you're a rugby podcast, wear your rugby
Correct.
stuff.
You'd be on
Reach out to
screen
rugby
wearing
people.
it. Correct.
Yeah.
And you'd also want people wearing it as well.
Yeah.
Everyone would love to wear something really chic and knitted. So, like, get it out there. Get it out there,
But there's so many different verticals that it could apply to.
Correct.
Like, podcasts about anything. Like, you've got a health and wellness podcast that's specifically talking to new mums, right?
Yep.
There's ways that you can apply this to. Like,
course.
something in your environment, in your scene that you're setting.
Correct. Yep.
Relates back to new
Correct.
mums. New mums would see that visually. They'd go, oh, yes, this
I'm
podcast is for
connected.
me.
Correct.
Maybe
I feel
got, like,
related.
soft pastel colours.
Correct.
And then maybe you find mummy influencers
Yep.
and connect with them.
And the thing is, they might even just be like, I just feel, even back to the knitting piece, right?
We're going to start a knitting podcast.
Can you imagine? It'd be so niche. It'd be great.
So niche.
But I do feel like, to your point, sometimes though, and it's funny because we're kind of laughing and being like, oh, it's such a far idea. But sometimes the more niche the product or brand, the better it is, because you're going to have a community out there that will stand by you, because it's so easy to assimilate, to align, to someone with a similar interest. Like, I might also be an avid knitter, and I'm like, this chick's awesome. I don't also think there is many knitting podcasts. So, like, that's a white space in the market to anyone that's listening at home. Get onto it.
And goes back to your very first point about understanding who you're trying to talk to.
Correct.
It's good. Now, one of the trickiest things that you'll ever have to do in the podcasting world is convert someone from social media
to the actual
to your podcast.
Correct.
It is so challenging.
Is,
So challenging. So if you were going to do a marketing plan to kind of think about that person and that journey, where would you start? And you can tie this back to products too, right?
Yes.
Like, how do you convert them from seeing you somewhere to taking an action?
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll share a couple of things that I think are really good that I've seen, which I will just like reiterate, and then I'll share some other ideas. So obviously, the way in which I find myself going from social media off platform to a podcast, for example, is when I'm kind of teased with not that something's coming, but that the answer to a problem that I have actually exists, but they've blocked it out. So, like, I think someone that does a really good job at this, whether or not people find it jarring or not, is Abby Chatfield. They always have it's like this massive emotion, and then they've blocked out what the word is, and you have to go to the podcast and listen to it, which I think is really good. But again, that's just something that's already a market that I've seen. The second thing I would think about is platform-wise, and this is a really interesting statistic, but up until probably about 2 months ago, TikTok had a very, very low chance of getting you off the platform. So people are not used to leaving platform. So on Instagram, we're used to swiping up to go shop. We're used to swiping up to go to websites and do things, right? That's part of the Instagram experience. We've been trained to do that by the model. But TikTok, only until about 2 months ago, was not trained. People are not trained to do that. We are just trained to scroll. We don't want to leave TikTok, right? And so then I'd start to ask the question, like, all right, if I'm going to create some short form content or invest in content that's actually aimed to get people from a snippet or from a preview or from a teaser to my podcast, I will start with a platform where they actually will go and leave the platform. So I'd start with Instagram, right? That's my first tip. Second thing I'd be thinking about, and it sounds silly, but it's just making sure that every single touch point actually leads back to said podcast. There's nothing worse than when you're on someone's Instagram page and they're like, you know, listen to the podcast now or see this now, and then you have to search for like a URL or go through like a link in bio that isn't actually clear, and you give up, right? The least path of resistance is how you're going to get the best number of people to your website or your podcast, right? Is by making it as easy as possible. Now, obviously the day that Instagram allows us to insert links into our captions will be amazing, because it will be a one click, off we go. But currently that doesn't exist.
No, there's a really good program called ManyChat. Have you used that before?
Yeah.
And so you just get them to comment, and then you can send them all 3 links. Correct. So it's like, click here for YouTube, click here for Instagram,
so much easier, right? And then also, I mean, this is something that your podcast listeners probably wouldn't have to worry about too much, but perhaps maybe you're going to have some new listeners that don't work with you or don't have familiarity with who you are. But I think a lot of podcasts miss the boat with how they generate hype for their podcast. Because like you said before, if I've just watched a clip and I've watched the whole clip, why would I go and listen to it? Like, if I can get bite-sized 15-second clips on your social media that tell me some of the best pieces or juiciest pieces of information, why would I go to the podcast? So I think it's being really strategic, being like, what can I do to tantalize people across without cannibalizing on their listen?
Yeah. And do you feel like you need to, we've done like some study into the psychology behind it as well. Yeah. And what we've found is that if you're just teasing and you're not giving any like full people circle value, well, they don't get that dopamine release.
Yeah, because they're just like, it's just too,
And so they're like, oh, what is this? And then you get to the end of it and you don't have the completeness. Like if you ask a question at the start of your reel and you're like, you know, what is the answer to this question? And by the end of the reel, you don't actually get that answer.
Yes.
People just get really frustrated.
Yeah, they do. And I'm one of those people, but then I end up going to the...
You do?
Oh, yeah, I go and I'm like, I go and listen to it, or I'll go and try and find comments so people are answering to what it is. Like I'll be like, what was it? You know?
Yeah.
We're very
the comment section.
We're very time poor, right?
Definitely.
But that's why I think comment sections, I know we're jumping around, but that's why comment sections are so valuable. They're the most underrated marketing tool. Like people just imagine if you were already in the comment section, already commenting like as a brand, and you're appearing in, because our consumers, us as people, we are time poor.
Yeah.
We want everything now.
Do you try and start conversations in the comments with the posts that you make as well?
100%. Yeah. It depends if it's my personal brand or chain. So with chain, we're very like friendly and warm in our responses but we don't try and create any further conversation. It's just like kind of like almost like a folio for us, our Instagram, right? But on my personal brand, like which is my Instagram, which I wouldn't even say it's a personal brand, but it is me as a person. I love getting the conversations going.
What sort of things do you do?
I'll just ask, like if someone comments about something, I start like little mini conversations in the comments, because I just find it's just a fun place to warm people up.
Yeah.
And personal brand's an interesting conversation because I feel like people forget that they are creating a brand that needs to be loved by humans, right? And one of the things that I've seen, like in clear format, working in the industry I do, is we work with influencers. Well, I will now call them influentials. And most of the time, the big influencers that have the big profiles actually aren't as influential as some of the people that have 10,000 followers. And it's because the people with 10,000 followers actually nurture their audience. They're actually humanizing their audience. Whereas these big influencers, they don't respond to DMs, they don't respond to comments, it's just one way. It's basically like a look at me show. Whereas I think, and we're going to see this with the rise of AI, and I'm calling it right now, that the people that humanize their interactions will win. That will be the marketing win.
Yeah.
It will be, there are a lot of big brands that are trying to be small brands right now. They're trying to act like they're so small and like so boutique and can comment back, because they're losing market share to brands that can just have conversations and make people feel valued and looked after. So I would encourage people, if you've got a podcast, it's a personal brand driven podcast, to be responding to comments and DMs at length. Don't you dare think that you don't owe these people anything. They are your ticket to success. Like they are, if you multiply and build a community, that they are the ones that then give you the opportunity for sponsorship. So give back, care about them.
You don't have a podcast without, you're just talking to yourself into a microphone if you don't have a community there.
That's what I mean. And I feel like people though are very, when it comes to marketing, they think very transactionally. So like I work in digital marketing. So I am like seeing brands want to throw millions of dollars at transactional marketing, which is like paid media, right? Which has value. And we can talk about that. But you've got to think back to the basics. You've got to think back to things like getting in the comment section, even on your Instagram, using things like the question and answer function often. It's like focus group studies, like get into the polls, get people actually engaging with your brand, learn more about people, because otherwise all you're doing is having marketing bias. I should put that on a t-shirt because it's a thing. It exists. And I truly believe it is one of the reasons why we can market brands better than other people can, is because we look at this completely without bias.
Yeah. I
learned very early into my career that if I didn't like a graphic that we created for a client that was in line with the client's brand guidelines, that I needed to get comfortable with that, because it's not me that was shopping that product, right? And because you can be so self-centered with marketing and so driven by bias. You're like, yeah, that looks great, but then maybe your audience doesn't think it looks great. Yeah, I could ramble about this.
It's so good. But we've seen this so many times with podcasts as well. Like we've got some people that we've spoken to, whether it's on this podcast or just in general, or analyze their content, and they've got literally millions of downloads, millions of followers. Yeah. And then we have these other people, one of them who we've already interviewed on the podcast, Darcy and Clarts. They have a community that is so engaged that somebody went and got a tattoo of the podcast on them.
But that is
multiple people now.
That is incredible. But that to me, and you ask me what business is going to be thriving in 5 years' time, it's that business.
Yeah.
Because they have bought the one thing that you cannot buy, and that is that community alignment, or that community like stan, like being like, that is like, I feel a part of it, right? You can't buy that. You can buy eyeballs, but you can't buy that.
No. Yeah. Before we go into paid, you mentioned question boxes, you mentioned polls. Is there anything else that you would do to really cultivate that community?
Okay, so cultivating community is basically just getting as much engagement as possible, or as much two-way interaction as possible, right? So making sure that you are responding to people, that is like bare minimum. Making sure that you actually are acknowledging them as humans and starting a conversation, sparking more than just a transactional conversation. Using all the engagement features. Instagram is very good for this. Instagram allows you to have such great engagement features like, stickers, polls, channels, just utilizing all the features, because I feel like a lot of people leave it behind. They focus on reels, they focus all their energy onto the feed and the reels, and having a really good bio and occasionally putting stories up, but just forget to actually make it interactive.
Yeah. And it's so much more fun when you can do that too.
Agree.
So we've spoken a lot about organic content.
Yes.
At the moment. We're going to dive into paid, but we're going to go, this is for someone who wants to take their podcast to the next level. Yes. They're going to invest in paid and they want to do it properly, because we have seen so many people waste money here.
I can imagine.
And I can only imagine what you've seen as well.
Yes.
So if someone is wanting to put some paid spend behind their podcast, like whether that's, they've created a reel, it's actually done really well.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, maybe more people would like this.
Yes, love.
Where would they even begin?
Okay. I, first of all, need to congratulate you on that question, because the fact that you said that it did organically very well, where should they go from there, is brilliant, because that is half the problem, because most people put content into ads that hasn't actually been solidified or proven as something that works, right? So we always say amplify what works. If it worked organically, it will work through paid. That is like the golden rule, right? So I just want to say, well done. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, so where you would start. Okay, well, first of all, you need to start to understand what platforms you want to advertise on and what is the requirement of that platform in 2025. So Meta, for example, if we talk about Meta, because I think Meta is the most transformational. I've worked with paid advertising for 10 years and Meta has been the most transformational. It has changed people's lives. When used correctly, it is a wild tool. So I would start with Meta. Let's just start there. Let's use that as an example. If we're starting with Meta, we need to first of all understand how the platform works. So the platform, what minimum spend we require, how many content pieces we need, what our hooks are, etc. To start with, depends what your objective is, but if you want to create a full funnel, and we will talk about that, where you are taking someone from not knowing you exist all the way to getting them to convert to do something, whether that's becoming a lead, whether it's becoming a podcast subscriber, whatever it is, you're going to need around $3,000 to $4,000 a month to actually break through. And one of the things, we do masterclasses around Australia, and I've taught over 1,200 people in that format now. And the people that I have heard in the audience with their hand up and say, like, it didn't work for me, Meta ads didn't work for me, I wasted thousands of dollars. I'll ask them, how much did you spend and in what time frame? And they'll say, oh, we spent like $5,000 over 6 months. I was like, that's your problem. And Meta doesn't give you a warning. They don't care, because you pay them no matter what. They don't care what your outcome is. That you are not investing into Meta and them guaranteeing you an outcome. So people get burned. They get burned so bad. Now, if you didn't want to do a full funnel and you wanted to just create some additional engagement on a existing reel, like you just wanted like extra reach, you could get away with spending $20 a day, right? But you've got to understand what your end goal is, right? Because sometimes also, let's not forget that if we are a national podcast and we want national listenership or even want listeners overseas, that's a whole other conversation. We are going to need the budget to match that, right? I was on a podcast, one of your podcasts, 3 or 4 months ago, and was speaking about how you could spend $20, $30 a day to amplify. And you absolutely can. If you're a local based business, if you have a 20-kilometer radius, 25-kilometer radius, you just want to engage and build up community, you could spend $20 a day. If you have a entity, a product, a service that needs to reach run a full funnel and build from like doesn't exist to now becoming a stan, and you need to talk to everyone, like as in you talk to the country, you're going to need $3,000 to $4,000 a month.
Okay. So that funnel, so I assume you're talking marketing funnel, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So what are the difference between those layers, and what's the difference in the content you make for each?
Okay, perfect. All right. So, oh my God, there's so many layers here. I might actually quickly just add.
High level.
High level. Okay. Well, I'll basically give you a mini meta masterclass on this. Okay.
Love this, guys.
Like an express version. Okay. First of all, for people that are not aware, like you said, you've got top, middle, and bottom. Think of it as an upside down triangle or an upside down funnel, where you have a large cohort or a large net at the top, and as you make your way down, things are getting tighter because you're starting to stream out the people that don't matter and you're moving through to quality at the bottom. When we think about top of funnel, we are thinking about people that don't know you exist. Top of funnel is pure cold marketing. It is reaching out to audiences that wouldn't even know you exist on this planet, right? And that's an amazing opportunity to be able to reach people that you previously couldn't, but it's also a curse because this is where a lot of brands go wrong. They will throw content out there that doesn't explain who they are. It just jumps straight. They skip the honeymoon phase and just try and get in the pants of their audience, right? And the problem with that is that consumers on the other end, like we kind of spoke to at the beginning, are absolutely saturated with thousands and thousands of marketing messages a day. They scroll right past. Who are you? I don't care. You're trying to sell me something. You're trying to pump yourself up. I'm not interested, right? So your top of funnel content should always be what drives someone to get to know your brand. Like, what is your hook? So if I was to create a marketing funnel for Chain Social, my top of funnel content would be like, did you know there are 10,000 agencies in Australia? And these brands chose us, right? That's what we would do, because then they'd be like, oh, what's this brand? It's a marketing agency. Who are they? Wow. We're already affirming who we are, right? We're not showing them case studies. We're not pissing them off with services yet. We're not getting anywhere near that. We're just starting with our hook. So thinking about what is going to attract a cold audience to stop, right? So in a podcast format, if we go back to the knitting podcast, I really hope someone on the other end does one day do a knitting podcast. There'll be lots of bite sizes here.
There's an AI generated one that came out a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, Sarah told me in the car there's an AI podcast with dogs talking to each other.
Stop.
And I was like, first of all, what the hell? And second of all, who is listening to that? Sorry, that's off topic. But anyway, let's go back to the knitting podcast.
Knitting podcast at the top of the funnel.
Knitting podcast. That would be, even if I was like the knitter, I'd be on camera to camera, just like knitting, like ASMR, being like, I knit full time. Like, I've knitted for XYZ. I've made this, and I just really like introductory, like just to the camera, really great, right? So think of it as like your entry hook, but it's why someone would want to get to know you, right? The better you get at creating top of funnel content, the stronger your funnel is going to be, because you're not letting the wrong people in. Right? If the wrong people start engaging, you're going to end up paying for all this money for people that aren't going to convert. So you want to get your best audience in that actually would enjoy your service, whatever it is, product. Your middle of funnel is where we like to nurture those people, right? So we're nurturing them with things that are going to value add. We're also building out trust at this stage. So our middle of funnel is very trust building generating. So for Chain Social, we would be like showing off trust things, which would be like our folio, our results. We're showing off that we say we do something, but we actually do it, and we're good at it, right? So for the knitting podcast, it could be like, we just delivered a knitted jumper to Rihanna. Now, obviously, maybe they're not knitting for Rihanna, but, you know, like just showing off some of their authority during content, trust building content. Like, that's what I'd put there.
Maybe showing like the guests that they've had on. Like,
that's exactly
those sort of
it.
things.
If we go back to a podcast, absolutely. We're thinking about who's been on the podcast, right? And then our bottom of funnel, which is like we call it our remarketing or our conversion phase, is where we are going to try and get someone to take an action. So you've got to remember the 2 stages ahead of us, or the 2 phases above us, top and middle, are not to do with conversion. And people get that really wrong. They will start by thinking they're going to throw out the subscribe to my podcast from the top, subscribe to my podcast. No. We don't do that. We warm them up. We take them through who we are. We then move on to what we do in our authority, and then what they can do to start connecting with you. In terms of the actual objectives we would run, at top of funnel, we're running awareness objectives. We're sometimes running like traffic objectives if you wanted to send them to somewhere to learn more. We're running video view objectives. Middle of funnel, same thing, a little bit of traffic, lots of impression and reach, because we're just trying to get our message and our content out to those people to remind them of who we are. And then the bottom of funnel, though, we're running our conversion-based tactics. So we're saying leads. We're trying to get people to sign up to a database. We're trying to get people to subscribe to a podcast, download an app, purchase a product on a website. So
that middle of funnel one, could you almost grab like screenshots from your community saying like, I love this episode, like overplay it with the clip from there or something like that too?
I would probably do that as a bottom of funnel, to be honest.
Would you?
Yeah, because that's going to be enough for people to go, I want to listen to that. I want to learn more about it. And you would link out that episode, you'd link it out across. When you say you've had people in your community that have spent a lot of money and wasted and it's got nowhere, I think there's sometimes that happens, one, with incorrect budgets where they've just not understood that they have to actually commit quite a large scale budget to see that response or that proper return. And two, sometimes the objectives are wrong. So people can set up the wrong objectives and start conversion objectives from the top. So just throw it. And then they're just, all they're doing is just slamming people who don't even know they exist. So like, why would I want to listen to it? And then also the other thing people get wrong is the content mix. So nowadays with Meta, for example, since June 6th, you need to have probably 10 to 20 ads running at once in a campaign.
Oh, wow.
If you don't, it's going to go in the bin. So Meta's whole entire currency now is content. Nothing else matters. But the worst part is, I shouldn't say worst part, but the most important part is that the content has to be different. So where we used to get away with like taking one clip and just like recutting it in multiple ways with some different some different text or hooks over the top, Meta will call that one video variation now. So your 5 ads wouldn't run.
Wow.
Yeah, so you'd have to have 20 different types of ads with 20 different content pieces. So graphics, animations, you just need a camera, professional clips, split screens, funky edits. Like, it's a lot of work, but you know why it's amazing? It's probably the fairest playing field I've seen on Meta since I've started in Meta 10 years ago. What I mean by that is like up until June 6th, brands could not compete unless they had the biggest budgets. It was a budget game. It was who has the most money, and Meta would just give you the best real estate. Now it's who has the best creative, not the best budget. So it's a really great time for small to medium business. And we're seeing that. Even my small business, St. Louv, we have run ads for St. Louv for a very long time. And we have had a certain cost per acquisition that we've, had for years. And it's being cut to a third of that now. And we're getting 3 times more customers with the same budget. Wow. Just because we can, as a media buyer, I know how to keep up with the content demands. And we're just repurposing stuff. It's not like we're producing content every day. We're a small business. We don't have budgets for millions of dollars of content. And that's our currency now. That is the currency. If anyone gets anything out of this, it is that if you're going to run ads, you better make sure you've got diverse content. And diverse content does not mean the same video cut up 3 times. It means making sure you're running graphics, statics, overlays, animations, UGC, lo-fi, hi-fi, professional, like everything, every type of content you can think of.
And I think there'll be so many people sitting here now who will be like, whoa, this feels so overwhelming and so crazy. We're talking about getting really good results here, right?
This is the thing. Like if you can do something as well as you want to do it, but the outcome is going to match the effort you put in. I truly feel that most people don't succeed on Meta because one, they don't take the time to learn how it works, or they just blindly trust an agency, which is the hardest thing to do in Australia because we don't have any, there's, like with doctors, there's like the APRA board and so there's people that are keeping them in a box to make sure that everyone's quite like to a certain standard. Digital marketing is the most cowboy driven industry in Australia. I've met so many cowboys in my time who just have no clue. They've learned something in a 2-day course and now they're saying that they're experts, right? It's not possible, right? You need to spend decades understanding the algorithm, understanding, like I've spent now more than $500 million in ads.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I know what works because I'm spending a volume. So your cousin's brother's sister's niece who's going to run your ads at $200 a week might be cheaper, but ask them, how much have you spent on platform? What are your results? Who do you run ads for? At what scale do you scale your clients' accounts at? Because they might be able to run an ad, but it's going to get you mediocre results, if not no results. And that's a problem. Knowing though, also, I have something controversial to say. I think a lot of people start a podcast because they think it'll be fun to start a podcast, right? But they don't think of it commercially. They don't think of it as a business. They think of it as like a side stream. And then they give up on it after a few seasons, right? Because they're like, oh, I just didn't do enough and it's taking up so much of my time. Well, yeah, it's taking up your time because it's a business. So think of it like a business. Invest into it like a business. Like, it drives me insane when people will say, oh, I tried this, but they tried it for 1 month.
Yeah.
Do you think if it was that easy that everyone would go do 9 to 5s? No, because it is hard to run a business. That's the whole purpose, though, is that you're investing into a business. You wouldn't expect a home to be built cheaply in a month. Things take time. They take 12 to 18 months to build a house. It does the exact same for a brand, and that is the same for a podcast, and that is the same financial demand. So I honestly would look at a podcast as a commercial venture. It's a business, because once you actually build up that audience and you build up the brand equity, you now can commercialize that with sponsors, paid partnerships. Like, that is a revenue stream. So you are technically building a business from scratch. You've got to approach the marketing for that in the same way.
Yeah, we always say that to all of our clients. Like, we think of it as a brand from day one.
It is.
But you also, I think the important part about something you said there as well is like thinking of the goals that you want at the end too.
Correct.
Like,
oh my gosh.
What is it?
Okay. I'm so glad you said that also, because this is another thing. Again, coming back to like my experience with people that own businesses, service businesses, products, not understanding what they want to achieve past 6 months. How are you going to build a business if you don't know what you want? Mm-hmm. You're driving a car blind with a scarf over your eyes. Truthfully, like, you need to understand, this is it. You need to understand where you want to go, what your ambitions are for it, what you want to get out of it, and then reverse engineer. Cool. So if I want to have 1 million downloads, how am I going to get there? All right, if I need 1 million downloads, I am going to need 1 million people to literally go there. So how am I getting 1 million people there? In marketing, in paid marketing, we do a reverse engineered calculator, which is basically where we put in how much we want to make, and it tells us how much we need to spend on Meta to receive that number of eyeballs and things like that. It's a calculator that one of my girls have made, and it's incredible. But the same thing would happen for podcasters. They would go away and go, okay, well, if I want to get 1 million downloads, apart from going viral on social media, which we can't rely on, you cannot rely on the possibility of going viral. So organic social media is absolutely an underpinning marketing foundation, and you can't not do it. But you can't rely on it to be your magic pill. You have to then take everything into your own hands and go, all right, I'm going to go do that, which is going to give me some visibility, but how am I going to amplify that visibility? Am I going to do paid? Am I going to invest in a PR agent for a project? Am I going to go do some wild out there activations that get people talking? Am I surprising and delighting? Like, what am I doing to get those eyeballs? Everything is data led too. So what I mean by that is, like, you can hack your way to any outcome, as long as you've got the budget and the understanding to get there. Yeah.
Shelby, today has been amazing. We have so much information from you, and I think so many different ways of thinking. Like, so many people, as you've said, they enter into the podcasting world and they just, think it's going to be fun and jump behind the microphone and then get frustrated when it's not working. Yeah. But I think this is the level of detail that the best podcasters in the world, like, I've spoken to some of them already, this is what they're doing. Yeah. And so this is the sort of thing and the thinking that you need to do. If you were to give someone one last piece of advice for starting a podcast or wanting to grow it, what would it be?
It would be to think outrageously outside the box. Outrageous. Like, I want you to think of the most wild thing that you could do that would align with your podcast, and then do it. Love it. Outrageous. Reach out, make it outrageous. That will catapult you. Absolutely.
Incredible. We will pop everywhere to find you, because I know you'll want to go and see what Shelby's been doing, the experiences we were talking about. But also check out the ads masterclass as well, if there's something that you want to learn there and you really want to dive into it properly. Thank you so much for coming on. And
so good to talk to you. Thank you for having me.